Welcome to the Elokus podcast. This is class number 12 in the Maamor Naso Rosh, and which is the fourth discourse in the great book Bishashek Dimu 5672 Tafresh Ayin Beis. We're holding the middle of chapter 13. We were in the midst of the general discourse is coming to prove that even that's what chapter 13 started with explaining. Sorry, not chapter 13. The whole fourth discourse, which began with chapter 12, and this is chapter 13, is to bring forth an idea that we cannot argue and say that the lights, the oiros, the lights that are going into Atzilus, that are going into the vessels, are purely simple. They have to have some design. In chapter 12, we learned a few of those proofs to that. And now he's continuing in chapter 13 to bring forth another idea. And this is from the concept that's brought in Zohar, that there is achlifu d'chtayu. Achlifu d'chtayu means an exchange where the lights of chesed go into the vessels of gevura, and the lights of gevura go into the vessels of chesed, kindness and severity. But their energies, the energy and the vessel, kind of mix and match. That could happen. And the very fact that we call it a light of kindness and a light of gevura is indicative to the idea, or is definitely illustrating the idea that even before the light goes into the vessels, it has already some measure, albeit very, very subtle and hardly noticeable, but yet it has already the leanings of kindness and gevura. The lights are already are different, and for that reason, it could be that an energy of kindness will go into a vessel of gevura, and an energy of gevura will go into the vessel of kindness. The example we gave of that he's giving in the practical human experience, is from two students. And one usually thinks one way, the other thinks the other way. One is usually judgmental, the other one is far kinder in their approach to things, like Shammai and Hillel. And at times, we find that Shammai and Hillel exchanged attitudes. That Shammai's attitude was leniency and kindness, and Hillel's attitude was discipline and strictness, and it's in one idea. In other words, and we took it even further. The last point we were learning in chapter number 12 was that even the same idea, they've already conceived it one way. Shammai and Hillel came in day number one of class. They studied, they heard the idea, and Shammai walked away with a strict approach. And Hillel walked away with this concept, calling for a leniency. And yet, a week later or a day later, whatever it is, they come back to their teacher, which means, as he explained in the previous class, they release the concept outside of their vessels. And when they release the concept, they bring it back into the abstraction. They listen to the concept being taught to them again by the teacher, the same lesson being given time number 2, and yet now they walk away with the opposite conclusion. Shammai feels the leniency, and Hillel feels the strictness. And what we discussed yesterday, the day before, actually, when I gave the class, is that that is the reason why he takes it to the extreme, is to show that even after an idea itself has been colored and formulated, like we discussed with the water becoming congealed, even after the ice cubes were formed in the various different forms, where the water congeals into a certain form, it can still get undone if you release it back to the water state, and then it can still switch. But this is an important note. The reason why there can be kindness and severity in the emotions of Shammai and Hillel and their emotional attitudes, that's because the idea itself contains already subtleties of kindness. The emotions are already the emotional responses to the idea have slight notes already. You can't notice them. They're there already in a very subtle way in the idea. But over there it's so subtle that you don't feel it in the abstract idea. You don't feel it. And what usually happens is that Shammai picks up on the subtle because he's searching for discipline, because he's a soul of discipline. Shammai usually picks up on those very, very subtle, like you're drinking a wine, and they say notes of vanilla. you can sense, tones of blackberry. Obviously, you have a very sensitive tongue. When you're drinking a wine, it tastes like wine. But with the fine tuning of one's taste buds, you can pick up on a distant echo of something. So, obviously, people based on their taste and their development of their taste of cuisine are probably predetermined to taste certain things more than others. Like someone can pick up on barbecue flavor, although it's very subtle because maybe they eat a lot of barbecue, so they have that sensitivity towards that. So in this case, Hillel and Shammai are very, very sensitive. Hillel is sensitive to kindness. Shammai is sensitive to gevura. So Hillel usually pulls the gevura out. It's the same idea. Let's understand something. The reason we can call it achlifu dechtayu is because it's the same idea. It's a pure abstract idea, but there is in it hidden a potential for this and a potential for that. And Hillel, when he learns the idea, brings forth the potential when it goes into his vessels. Shammai brings forth the opposite potential when it goes into his vessels. The idea of achlifu dechtayu is that for whatever reason, sometimes Shammai, albeit he's usually a more spicy type of a soul, a more heart, for whatever reason, picks up on the sweet notes that are on it and brings that into his vessels, and it becomes a sweet idea. And Hillel picks up on the sourness of it, on the tartness of it, or the vinegary of it, whatever you want to call it. And although it's not usually what Hillel would detect, but for whatever reason, Hillel is, because he has, as we discussed last week in the other class, because Hillel also has a potential for gevura, and Shammai in his vessels also he's going to mention that in today's class. Shammai also has a potential in his vessels for chesed, because all souls are a composite that include everything. But the question is, which one is the dominant gene in their soul? In Hillel, it's chesed, and in Shammai, it's gevura. And usually we would expect that Shammai would highlight the gevura notes of the abstract idea, and Hillel will highlight the chesed notes of the abstract idea. But there is a possibility that they will exchange it, and the notes of chesed will land in Shammai's cup, and the notes of gevura will land in Hillel's cup. That's an achlifu dechtayu. Okay, that's what we learned in the last class. L'chein matzino. We start with the parentheses over here. L'chein matzino. This idea that they can exchange the vessels, we find Beishamai Makilin. There are times when Beishamai it's rare, but we do find that in cases where Shammai is lenient, and since Shammai is from the realm of Gevura, of discipline, they should have always processed everything and always find the strict approach. The idea is it was exchanged, the light of kindness, manifested in the vessel of Gevura, as it is known. Now, this idea that really the extreme manifestation of Chesed and Gevura will only happen in the vessels, but really in the oil itself there is hidden notes of Chesed and Gevura, which means the potential for one to hear this concept and become enraged, for example, and the concept and the potential of someone to hear the very same concept and become very compassionate and very empathetic. So it's there in the concepts in a very, very hidden state. So he's now going to prove it from the general concept of ideas versus emotions. We know that ideas, concepts, and intellectual understandings lead to certain emotions. And yet, as we were talking earlier, that the same idea can lean both ways. This is the concept that says that in the mochen, in the mind, there is already the beginning, albeit very, 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 very unnoticed and very small and very, very subtle, but there is the beginning of the birth of the emotions already in the intellect. And he's going to prove it from the concept of tefillin. That is known be'inyan dalet parshiyos. We know we have in our tefillin, the het tefillin, that those are the boxes that Jewish men wear for prayer daily. So in the tefillin, there is 4 compartments. The head tefillin has 4 compartments. In each compartment, there is a little parchment with a portion of the Torah inscribed on it by a scribe. Now we know that these 4 parchments of Torah, the spiritual meaning of them, the godly meaning of them, is that each compartment is holding another element of the divine intelligence. Basically, when you're wrapping tefillin on your head, you are synchronizing your brain with God's brain. It's incredible. In the tefillin, it is captured God's infinite mind, and when you're putting it on your head, you're literally, it's like when you're attaching your phone to your computer and causing the two to sync. When we wear tefillin, we sync our brain to God's brain, and a download happens. Now we don't feel it unless we're a big tzaddik. We don't feel different. We don't feel expansive mindfulness. But when Mashiach will come, when everything will be revealed, as a result of all of our synchronization of our mind with God's mind, our brain will be infinitely expansive because of the incredible downloads that are happening every day when you put tefillin. God is zipping in a zip file. That's what these compartments. That's what these tefillin parchments are. They are a zip download where God zips His brains down into a file, into the tefillin, and from the tefillin it goes into our head. Now, being that the mochin above have 4 compartments, as we're going to see in a moment, that's why our tefillin has 4 compartments. Now, generally we know that the mochin, that intelligence has 3 departments. There is the right side of the brain, or the right power of the brain, which is the ability of the creative side of the mind, the chachma element, where things are created, where ideas are invented. And then there is the left side of the brain, which is the analytical side of the brain, where things are broken down and you can expand and develop an idea. You can develop something with all of its detail and sub-detail. It's the left side of the brain. And then there is the third compartment of the brain, which is when you connect to something. In other words, an idea becomes very much assimilated and becomes very personal. It becomes very much part of you attach yourself to it. You bond with it. That's called the das. And that's the back side of the brain. If that would be the case, so the tefillin should have had 3 compartments, like God's brain has 3 compartments, and then our tefillin should also have 3. But yet, it's 4. So the question is asked why, and it is explained that the das, which is the back element standing behind the right and the left to the back side of the head, is really splintered or splits into two sides. It has like a channel, like a plug, like a wire that goes off to the right side and goes off to the left side. You can see this also in the straps of the tefillin. Straps of the tefillin around the head form a circle. Then there is a knot in the shape of a yud, which we have at the back of our head, literally in the back of the skull. And then from there, the 2 strings after the knot go forth. One of the string, the hide, the leather, goes from the back over to the front, and one goes down the right, over the right shoulder, and one goes over the left shoulder, going down all the way to like the person's hips and thighs. That's the way the tefillin work. And the concept behind it is that from the das splinters into, das is the source of the emotions. So being that the emotions are set up aligned on 2 columns, the chesed column, the column of kindness, and the gevura column, the column of discipline, it's for that reason that das itself has already it's split into 2 compartments. Now the question over here is, das is still an intellectual faculty. Das is not an emotion. It is part of the intelligence. And the emotions are a latter experience, generally associated physiologically with the heart, not with the mind. And if that's the case, how come the tefillin would have 4, which seems to imply that the chesed and the gevura are already in the head? And the answer is based on what we're learning now. Then when you have an idea, although the idea is just a pure objective idea, it's not about, there's no emotion to it, connected to it. It is just a pure concept. But since God, the infrastructure, the way the system of evolution of the way that God evolved within himself, the evolution of Hashem in his attributes, which later becomes the evolution of the human experience, is that intelligence produces emotions. So the beginning, and in many ways, the intelligence is called the parents of the emotions. That's why the Chachma and Bina are called father and mother, Kabbalistically. They're the parents of the emotions. And when parents produce children, so the emotions are a outcome and a production of the mind. And the way parents produce children is that the child first exists within the parents, albeit in a hidden state. That's pregnancy, where the child is hidden inside the mother. So that's kind of the idea of what we're saying, even though that's the mother is Bina, and here we're talking about Das, but for the general idea, you understand that the subtleties and the beginnings of the emotions are already, the light notes that can hardly be felt of the emotions are there already in the concept. Although we don't feel it, we're just hearing an idea, not an excitement of an emotion. As he says over here. As it is known in Yadalit Parshi. But this point of tefillin is pointing to that in the mind there is already a leaning to the right side or to the left side, to chesed or to gevura. Which are the four mochet, the four mind powers. Chachma, bina, wisdom and understanding, v'chesed and gevura, and kindness and gevura. By the way, it's like this. The first two Torah portions of the tefillin, which is V'haya kiviyacha, Kadesh and V'haya kiviyacha, which are two portions of Parshas Bo, which is in the end of the third Torah portion of Exodus. Over there, it speaks about the mitzvah of sanctifying the firstborn and various other mitzvahs. Those two parshiot, they are contained within themselves the concentration of God's chachma and bina. That's the pure intelligent part of the tefillin, the intellect of the tefillin. The latter two, which is Shema and V'hoyim Shemaya, which deal more with already love, because Shema, what is Shema? V'ahavta, you should love God. So there's an energy of love over there, of emotion. And V'hoyim Shemaya has the element of a certain strictness. If you will listen to my commandments, I will reward you. Like we discussed in the other class just a few days ago. V'hoyim Shemaya has got more of a gevura element to it, like we said, an element of punishment and strictness and so on and so forth. So those are the ones that they're really not emotions. They're really part of the intellect. They're part of the das, but the das splits into two, as he's going to explain over here. Over here, he doesn't even say there's das. It's chach. If it would be das, it would be three. It's chachma and bina and chesed and gevura. But the question is, that seems to be a great wonder. How can chesed and gevura be considered shem midas, which are really emotions? How can they be considered? How can you count them into the mochen? Tefillin is supposed to be the mochen of God, which means the intellect, not it's the brain of God, not the heart. Who the idea is, like we said earlier, this that we say, that chesed and gevura, which we count them as emotions, chesed and gevura, which we count as emotions, that's when the lights of chesed and gevura descended into the vessels of chesed and gevura, into the keli, into the vessel. Shesham, over there, they become a full-blown emotion. Hemischalkim, they become divisible and very noticeable and very differentiatable. Lias chesed oy gevura, to be an energy of kindness, oy gevura or gevura, and they're antithetical to each other, a complete opposite type of an emotion. Al yedei mezeg keli. That's because of the chemistry of the vessel. As we remember, we learned that a red glass is going to make the water become red, and the blue glass is going to make it blue. And we're going to see later when it comes to light, it's actually not just pretending to be red and blue, but actually affecting that it actually does become that literally. But when the lights are still in a divested state, when they're still in a state of light, which light? The light of chesed and gevura. But before they go into the vessels, they're not midos, they're not emotions. They're just a leaning. They're a leaning towards kindness. Ein bem eschalkos chesed and gevura adayin. They don't have a visibility of chesed and gevura. You wouldn't even notice chesed and gevura in it. However, like by the example, Shammai v'Hillel anal, just like we learned in Shammai and Hillel. Shammai and Hillel would be considered already the vessels. Shammai is the vessel of Gevura, and Hillel is the vessel of Chesed. Shemischalkim liyas Chesed Gevura, they are dividing. Of course, Shammai and Hillel have an intellect as well, but we're looking at them as from a broader infrastructure. We're looking at them as part of one configuration, where Shmai and Naphtali, the teachers, they are the brains, and Shammai and Hillel, they are the heart, they are the emotions, they are the reaction, they are the emotional reaction to the intelligence of the teachers of Shmai and Naphtali. So Shemischalkim liyas Chesed Gevura. When does it become Chesed Gevura? Bekelim Shalem, when it goes into their vessels of Shammai and Hillel. V'loy ba'oros, not in the lights, because when it's still in Shmai and Naphtali's classroom, when it's still in a pure conceptual state, it's not Chesed and Gevura, but we can't say it's not at all. There is notes of Chesed and notes of Gevura. It's very light. It's very benign. That's what he's saying over here. Even though there's no Chesed and Gevura, but nevertheless, moving it's understand shegam seichel harav, that also the intelligence of the teacher hareyu al kopanim makoyer. It's at least a source b'chinas Chesed and Gevura of Chesed and Gevura. Sheyesh by b'chinas Chesed and Gevura behelim. The kindness and the Gevura is in a concealed state. Rak shehu b'chinas pshitas. It's in a state of simplicity. Legabe seichel v'asagas hamakablim, in comparison to the intelligence and the full comprehension of the recipients. When the students are receiving it, then it's really becoming formulated into a form of Chesed, like the water becoming frozen into a form. Shebehem ba Chesed Gevura, which in them comes the kindness and the Gevura, b'chinas eschalkus, becomes very divided. Bimitzius, it becomes very substantiated in a substance of kindness and in a substance of Gevura. Ukemoy bedalit parshias the Tefillin, like in the 4 parshios of Tefillin, harei abeis moichin Chesed Gevura, the 2 moichin of kindness and Gevura in the Tefillin, ime yoisan moichin, although Tefillin is not going on the heart, it extends to the heart, but the Tefillin itself is sitting on the head. Which mean also spiritually, and also in the realm of the divine, it's pure moichin, it's pure brains. It's not Chesed and Gevura, but it's bebchinas Chesed and Gevura. Bechina means it's already has the potential and the very, very slight nuances of Chesed and Gevura al kol panim, at least. As stated elsewhere, and as I mentioned earlier, shazeu b'chinas hadas. That's what das is. Das is the intermediator between the intellect and the emotions. It serves as the connector between the intelligence and that's why it says that if a person doesn't activate their das, holy das, and we're lacking in our das, which is very not good, then what happens is we can study and learn and have a lot of rich knowledge, but it doesn't impact our emotions. And if it doesn't impact our emotions, we can remain an emotional, completely unrefined being, although intellectually we have such incredible understanding and knowledge, but emotionally we're completely disconnected. And obviously that would mean that our behavior will not reflect the refinement of our mind, which is a very exiled state of existence, a very fragmented and a person then lives in 2 worlds, contradicting one each other. It's no good, and that's why the whole point of avoda, of service, according to Chassidus, especially of prayer, is to activate the das, which is intense work. It's through deep meditation and connecting ourselves to an abstract idea, and you make it personal, you make it real, you make it alive, and then you're connecting the intelligence to the emotions. This is what bonds it l'chesed and gevura to chesed and gevura. It's like basically it means when you take things personal, that's when you have an emotional reaction. If you don't take things personal, it's you're very cold, and you just learning concepts and there's no warmth there, there's no connection to it, then you can learn the most brilliant ideas. You don't get excited about it. You're cold. People get very excited when they, passionate about things and they argue. That's because there's das. You take things personal. You feel it. You connect. It's an important thing. Right? V'nimtza comes out. Shegam b'pchinas hapshitus. But what do you see? That even pshitus, even when you say that there is a certain level, there's a certain state of existence that's pshitus. That is the mind, the intelligence is simple and it doesn't have the character of the mochin. It doesn't have the character of the midos. This serves the point that we're saying, that the whole reason why we're learning all of this whole idea, is to bring out this point. What it's saying is that the oiros, the lights, which in general, the lights of the intelligence are called simple in comparison to the vessels of the midos of the emotions. In other words, the real kalim and vessels are, in general, it says in Chassidus that in the world of intelligence, the kalim are much less. It's mainly oiros, it's mainly lights. And that means even though in the 10 spheros, in general, there is all the 10 spheros have lights and vessels. But when we look at them as a sum totality, in the emotions, there is much more containers and vessels, and the intellect is far more just pure energy, pure light. So, but you were using this as an illustration, that even though the intelligence is considered pashut and simple, it's not utterly simple. There is already somewhat of a predisposition to be this way or that way. Einoi pshitas mamish. It's not utterly simple. Imayos, however, on the other hand, it's simple enough that the very same idea can sometimes be, the chesed element of it can be activated, and sometimes the gevura element can be activated. It's simple enough, the water, that it can become a circle ice cube or a rectangle ice cube. In other words, it has leanings to a circle and to a rectangle or to any shape, but it's still undefined by it that you can bring out one over the other. And in kindness and in severity, it's like the same idea, it can still flip. And even the same person learning it, like we said, a person learning the same subject 2 times, you can come to different conclusions. Because when you're going back to the original subject and you're willing to relinquish your preconceived notions and approach it as if you never learned it, you might see it completely different. You might yourself pick up on different nuances that you didn't have before. That's because, and even though you have, that's because the concept is still, the definitions are so light and so hardly there that it can be reshaped this way and that way. That's why it can still be it can switch. But this all proves the concept that the lights are not completely simple. And this is why he's saying that, because again, let's always connect this to the main theme of the entire beginning of the book of Ayin Beis, is to explain to us that Or Pnimi is not really a true expression of Or Ein Sof. Because the true Or Ein Sof is the Or Makif, is the encompassing lights. Those have no limitations at all, no definitions, no subtle leanings this way or that way. It's utterly simple. But that light can never ever come into vessels. They remain always, the makif always remains makif. The lights, the fact that lights could settle into vessels is because the lights themselves are they're vesselable, because inside of them there is already a potential definitions, if you might say. Moving mizeh, and what's understood from this, hu gimel inyanim, 3 things. Ha'echad, the 3 things, we're not going to learn all 3 right now, we're going to finish, but I just want to start this. He's going to summarize now. Ha'echad, the oiros the chesed and gevura, that the lights of chesed and gevura, keshehem ba'hakelim shalahem, when they go into the vessels, hareyem bebchinas chesed and gevura mamish. Then they become really chesed and really gevura, they become already defined. Just like the abstract idea, Kishihi ba'asagas Hillel v'Shamai. Once Hillel and Shammai grabbed it and processed it in their minds, hareu bebchinas chesed gevura mamish. Then it's literally kindness and discipline. The ba'asagas Hillel asvara mechayeves hachesed, because when Hillel takes it, the concept is obligating kindness. In other words, this idea is calling for a lenient application. And the opposite in Shammai's mind, chulu. Harei, what do we see? That the lights are literally chesed and gevura. The ein zeh, that's what I said earlier. Kamoi mashal hamayim. It's not like water that goes into a colored glass. Shemishtanim lefi gavin akelim, that changes according, that is perceived. You're looking into a red, a glass that's red, that's tainted or colored red, and you look at the water looks red, but in essence the water is still the clear color. Over there, even when they are in the vessels, and they appear to be according to the color of the vessel, they're not colored. It's not like you put red Kool-Aid into the water and made it red. You didn't put red dye into it and make it red. But when the energies go into the vessels, the idea when it's in Hillel's mind, it does become, it is obligating, it's calling for a judgment of kindness, and not stringency. And the opposite in Shammai. And the reason is, and that is because the reason why the lights are able to actually formulate and become real chesed and real gevura, not only appear to be that way, that's because inherently in the lights itself, before they go into the vessel, there is already that potential color. Chesed gevura sheba'oros in the lights einoi rak mitzad hakelim. It's not only because of the vessels, levad. Ki mitzad shoyresh u'makara or, because of the root and the source of the light itself. It's the kindness and the severity that's in the idea by Shammai and Hillel. The reason why Shammai and Hillel take it in two opposite directions, because also in the teacher's teaching, in Shmaye's teachings, Yeshboi, meaning in Avtalion and Shmaya, their teachers, Yeshboi chesed gevura behelim. There is a chesed and gevura in a hidden state. And even though when it goes down into the vessel, it becomes formulated. Okay, you know what? I want to keep it to 30 minutes. And if I'm going to continue pushing this, it's going to end up being more. So let's leave it over here. Have a wonderful Shabbos. And we'll continue Be'ezus Hashem next class. Meanwhile, let Mashiach be here today.